Hi, Midnight Fear Files. Today, I'm going to explain a creepy, real-life story submitted by a woman who moved into a new apartment after a breakup, only to be tormented by something she still can't explain. Let's dive in. It was a few years ago now. I had just broken up with my boyfriend and moved into this cute little apartment. It was an entire apartment complex. The complex itself was beautiful, quiet, and elegant. I quickly made friends with neighbors and several of the other tenants. It was just a nice and friendly little community. A few months into my lease, I thought I heard the sound of running coming from the hallway one night. When I was getting ready for bed, I looked out the peephole of the door, but didn't see anything. There weren't any kids in my building, so I couldn't imagine who would be running at that hour. But strange things happen, so I didn't question it. The next few nights, I heard the sound again. I didn't get up and look, because it just didn't seem that important to me at the time. It's worth noting that my apartment is on the ground level and my windows face a beautiful courtyard. The door to the apartment is still inside the building, and you need a key to get into the building. It took a little while to get used to the windows being at ground level at first, because if you wanted to, you could come right up to my bedroom window. I will say that I wasn't worried about anybody in this community doing that. I'm just stating that it was something on my mind when I first moved in. However, that information is about to become relevant, because one night, I woke up to what sounded like giggling outside my bedroom window. It was weird for sure, but I just figured some kids were acting stupid and hanging out too close to my window. I tapped the window glass and made a loud shushing noise. The giggling stopped for just a second, and then a faint tapping sound could be heard on the other side of the glass. It freaked me out, but I wasn't about to let some kids have that satisfaction over me. Once I composed myself, I grabbed the curtain and whipped it open. There was nobody there. I was looking at the quiet night courtyard and nothing more. Even if some kids were out there, I have no idea where they would have gone that fast. I closed the curtain and shrugged it off. I wasn't about to let some kids ruin my sleep. This weird giggling outside my window continued for a few nights. I just learned to ignore it. I have young nieces and nephews, and usually when I ignore their stupid pranks, they stop doing whatever they're doing. That was my plan with these giggling kids. I assumed that if I just stopped acknowledging them, they would stop trying to mess with me, and unless they gave me a reason to report them, I wasn't going to bother the apartment complex manager with this. I think it was 2 days later while I was at work that I received an email from the complex manager. She seemed short in the email. She asked if I could stop at the main office when I got home from work. She had to show me something and she claimed it was urgent. I told her I could stop by after work. I remember all day long being stressed about it. I was worried my rent money didn't clear, or something like that. When I showed up, she told me to lock the door. She started talking quietly, almost in a whisper. This one guy who works in the security office came in and sat next to me. The manager told me that while the security guard was monitoring some footage, he came across this. She showed me security camera footage of the hallway where my apartment is, located around 2 blocks in the morning. 2 small hooded figures approached my door. They looked about the size of children, who were maybe around 10 or 12. They were just standing there. In the grainy footage, it looked like they were standing about an inch away from the door. The scariest part of this was that when she fast-forwarded the footage, they didn't move at all. It was nearly 10 minutes of them just standing extremely close to my apartment door. Before they finally walked away, one of the small figures reached for the doorknob and tried opening the door. You can clearly see them jostling the door a few times, but it doesn't open. After the 10 minutes in the video, they skip away from the sight of the camera. I was finally freaked out. Whoever these kids were, they were targeting me for some reason. I told the security officer and the manager about the window incident, but when they looked back at the footage, they found nothing. We still called the police and gave them a statement. They said, if anything else happens, give them a call. But at that point, there really was nothing they could do. The security officer attempted to see if they could find out where the kids skipped off to when they left my apartment door, but it's almost like they vanished. They couldn't find them on any other camera on the entire complex. The next night, I decided to stay awake. I was going to catch these kids one way or another, but that night, there was nothing. No giggles and no sounds from the hall. It was about a week later, and I heard something coming from the hall. It was about 1:30 in the morning. I muted the TV and listened intently. I heard the sound of my doorknob rattling around. It was happening. The kids were back at my door. I ran over nervously and yelled for them to get away. I could hear a child laughing, and then another soft child voice whisper, "Mom, we're home. Just open the door and let us in." I didn't say anything. I looked through the peephole and just saw two small figures with their heads down. The voice whispered again, "Please let us in. We're home now, please." That last "please" that the child said almost sounded desperate. I didn't care. I yelled that their mother doesn't live here anymore, and that I was going to call the cops. Both kids started to giggle. Then the doorknob started to shake again. One of the kids started throwing their body into the door, but it wouldn't budge. I stood there holding the door for a minute. I didn't hear laughing anymore, and the doorknob wasn't shaking. When I looked one last time, nobody was out there. I was still too afraid to open the door just in case they were just outside of my view. I called the police, and the cops were quick to assume it was just the local kids playing a prank on me. I didn't argue with that because it seemed like the most logical explanation. I finished with my statement, and that was that. A few days later, I ran into the apartment manager in the parking lot. She pulled me aside and asked if I had experienced anything since that last time. I told her no, and that I was sure it was just some local kids. She made a weird face and told me she wasn't so sure. She told me that the woman who lived in the apartment before me was strange. She didn't give me a whole bunch of information for privacy reasons, but she was fairly confident that something horrible happened with that woman's children. She didn't elaborate or give any details. She didn't even give me the name. She just implied that something horrible happened and left it at that. She said that she had already said too much, and she didn't want to get into trouble for sharing personal information. She told me to be careful and just keep locking my doors. I'll never forget her walking away saying this wasn't a prank. To my knowledge, I don't think those kids ever visited my apartment again while I was there. I've spent some time trying to figure out exactly what happened, like who these kids were and what the apartment manager meant. Was she implying that these kids were like ghosts or something? I know that seems insane, and I'm sure that's not what it is, but you have to admit it is strange. It's weird to me that the police and the security officer couldn't find where these kids went after they left my apartment. Something that dawned on me after I had already moved out was something I had overlooked. There should have been no way for the kids to get inside the apartment building without a key. As I said before, there were no kids that lived in my specific building. So how did they get in? Where did they go? As time goes on and I reflect on this story, I get more freaked out. It's amazing to me that I wasn't more scared in the moment. I'm years removed and don't even live there anymore. And I'm more scared today writing this than I was when I experienced it. I still don't believe in ghosts or anything paranormal, but I can't explain exactly what it was. Neighborhood kids are the easy solution, but the more I replay the memories in my head, the more impossible that seems. I know how this story sounds, but I think it's worth sharing. Maybe I really did have an experience with something not from this world. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.